It's known for many things. Its great coastline. Many will say that Sri Lanka has the best food perhaps in this part of the world. Its green cover often talked about, and of course its very warm people. But there's so much more to Sri Lanka as well. This is a country in the middle of its digital revolution. It's embarked on a very ambitious plan, and the growth rate of the internet population here in Sri Lanka is also on the rise. At the same time, there's appetite for a whole lot more. Well, welcome to Facebook Studios at Raisina Dialogues, and let me introduce a very special panel. Joining me now, Anuradha Herath, Director, Media and International Relations from the Prime Minister's Office of Sri Lanka. Also, Waruna Dhanapala, Additional Secretary, Development, Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Sri Lanka. Thanks so much for taking our time and your participation here. I want to start by actually asking you both the same question. Anuradha, first to you. We know that the making Sri Lanka digital is a priority and a stated aim of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. What does this entail? What is the transformation that Sri Lanka will have to undergo for it?
So I'll talk about some of the overall objectives, and I think Waruna, my colleague, will be able to tell you a little bit more about the details. But for both President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and even previously with President Rajapaksa, in terms of technology, it has always been about making it accessible to the widest number of people. And luckily, we have a youth population that is very quick to pick up new technology. You might also know some of the stats. For example, we have 22 million people, around 22 million people in the population, but we have more mobile phones than the population itself. So, you know, we have a population that's very wants to be very tech savvy, and it's very open to that, especially the youth. So overall, we want to make it accessible not only to, you know, the upper class and the urban populations, but also, you know, everyone who wants access to technology should have it, both in terms of the financial aspect of it as well as infrastructure. And there is some, you know, room to grow in terms of making that infrastructure available to all parts of the country. So I think that's going to be a key priority for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in terms of making it accessible to a large number of population, which also gives access then to, you know, small and medium scale businesses, employment, and all these you know, types of sectors become improved with access to technology.
Right. That's an important point that you touched upon there, because technology can be such a game changer, right, when you get access to it to as many people as possible. Waruna, come in here. We're at the start of 2020. If I were to have this conversation right here with you in 5 years, how will Sri Lanka have changed?
Thank you, Natasha. From what Anuradha mentioned, we have a leadership, a new leadership for the next 5 years. The President himself has taken the ICT sector and digitalization under his purview, so that we can actually implement the national digital policy which is coming. We have main enablers. One is trust, leadership, connectivity, and smart applications, and as enablers. And as well as we have 3 pillars. One is innovative economy, and effective governance, and a secure nation. So at the end of this period, that for 2025, we want to see almost all people are using technology with much comfort and for their socio-economic benefit. So education wise, when it comes to health or any other activity, this should be a part of their day-to-day life. While the IT sector, IT industry itself will grow. Today it's over $1 billion income for the country. It will be 3, 4, 5 times larger by 2025. So we as a nation could achieve the upper middle income status last year. So we would see a developed state by 2025.
Right. And this is something that Anuradha touched upon, which was access. And I just want to sort of get a bit more from you, Waruna, on that. And I just want to hear your thoughts on how you can make this growth inclusive and make sure that nobody gets left behind. And this is the debate that we're having in this part of the world particularly so much.
Indeed, the President's manifesto named Future Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor has specifically mentioned it is a citizen-centric approach. It is not a technology-centric approach, but technology-based society. So where the inclusiveness have been covered in all aspects, maybe it's gender, maybe it's the age, or maybe the geographic diversion. So with the liberalization of the telecom sector in mid-90s, Sri Lanka could make a healthy competition of almost 5 operators. So we have good network readiness index globally, as well as one of the lowest data bundle cost pricing wise. Recently, Sri Lanka is several taxes from telecom sector, so we see more connectivity. The technology is there. The government-wide technology is fine. There's a government-wide network, Lanka government network. But when it comes to applications and content in local language, we have a lot to improve. So that's how we can make it more inclusive and more accessible, and use this technology for their benefit.
Could I just maybe make a pitch, since we're at Raisina Dialogue and we're all about connecting? Some area that we do need help with is capacity building. So in order to take the knowledge out into rural areas, communities that might not be able to easily access it, we do need assistance with capacity building, which we have been speaking about to many countries, in terms of if countries can help us on that front. And the other thing is gender has to be spoken about in this, because that's still a problem. Even with all this infrastructure rebuilding, everything, women are still not coming to that same level in terms of accessing the technology. So that's another thing that I'm sure that we'll have to look at in the future.
Right. And that sort of brings me to my next point, because I mean, you raise an interesting point here, and a significant one at that. But I also want to talk to you a bit about, when we talk about going digital and a country of this size sort of taking vast numbers of its people online, there's also going to be the future, which is pretty much uncertain when it comes to, for example, jobs. What are the jobs of tomorrow to look like? We're not sure, so we don't know. Very often we hear, what skills should we prepare our young with? So just keen to hear your thoughts on that. How do you see that progressing, and what are the growth targets there?
Basically, the traditional education system must be revisited, and a lot of curriculum must be changed. So for example, taking IT sector as a future employment should be seen by parents with trust. So we have to build that trust to the education system, primary, secondary and higher education sector. So not only to create job opportunities in the IT industry, we are running short of IT graduates for the industry. We are running short of about 12 to 15,000 graduates for the industry itself to run it smoothly. That's why we have introduced the IoT and new technology of the fourth industrial revolutions in phase wise to the government curriculum. There are a lot of infrastructure built upon the classroom ways. There is student-centric education is promoted through a lot of content and other interactive measures.
Got it. You want to come here, Anuradha?
Can I add a comment? Yeah, and that's exactly true. And another thing that the president has been talking about is in Sri Lanka we have this problem where not all people who would want a degree have the ability to go into a state university. So he wants to make other opportunities available. And he's talked about technology-based entrepreneurship, how we have to sort of promote that idea and get youngsters, encouraged to do, because the entrepreneurship isn't in everyone's blood. Some people are afraid to take the risk and so forth. So he's really trying to promote that also, in addition to what Waruna spoke about as well.
Right. Now, if we just we were talking about the future, if I could just pull you back, Anuradha, you especially into the not so into the not so forgotten past and very recent, actually, just the Easter attacks, a very tragic time, of course, for the country. Now, when we talk about going forward and looking at these new technologies and looking at the future, how does that and what it does to society, what kind of role does it play in all of that?
So in addition to expanding our digital infrastructure, another priority for Sri Lanka is securing that infrastructure. And as you know, when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa came to India, Prime Minister Modi announced a $50 million aid package for counterterrorism. And I think there needs to be a link, and I think this has already been discussed in terms of intelligence in the online space as well, which I think I'm not an expert in the intelligence field to say this for certainty, but in looking at things that we have found out since the attacks, it seems like if we had a more robust system in place, perhaps we would have been able to find some of these indications that were very easily accessible online, after the fact, obviously this time. But that link needs to be made in terms of the digital space as well as counterterrorism activities that the government plans to undertake.
Okay. And just to stay on sort of politics and keep the focus on it for now, we've just finished a presidential election in Sri Lanka. I had the good fortune of sort of having a ringside view to how that was taking place. But you've got a sort of much bigger election coming up in just a few months from now. So what role do you see for digital there is my first question to you.
So we have, I mean, obviously social media played, I think everyone knows that social media played a huge role, not only in this last year's election, but also in 2015 it played a role. It's playing an increasingly, you know, dominant role in politics. So we're facing two key things I think that we're facing really. One is obviously fake news, like a lot of other countries are also facing. So how do we combat it? I know Facebook is helping us as well in terms of targeting the fake news aspect. And then you've got violent extremism online, which has also become a problem for us. So when elections become close, these things get aggravated, you know, and we have a problem controlling that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that, you know, we at Facebook sort of really, for us, this is one of the top elections in the region, and we're really committed to sort of working closely to ensure that none of that happens on the platform. But where do you believe, and I want to ask both of you, social media sort of played a positive role in Sri Lanka, and both of you can also sort of then talk a bit more about where is there room for improvement?
Let me talk that SME sector is coming up. There are a lot of startups and innovators and freelance communities there. So the government has made an effort to make these digital platforms, social media, for the enterprises to grow and to reach the potential market. So there are a lot of tools that are not available earlier for a targeted market approach. So that the local content, local language applicable in most of these social media, and there's a growth in the mobile devices, as Anuradha mentioned. There's a penetration is very high, and the prices of device will become less and less. So that there are some common application and specific applications that can be readily used by these enterprises, so they can run on these social media platforms. So that's the role we see, rather than just entertainment or just communication tool. It should be a life support tool. So that's what we see.
I like that phrase. I like how you're sort of putting all of this and calling it life support. I think it really is, because when you are literally at the cusp of taking off on this digital revolution, then this is what you need. Anuradha, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Waruna there. It's empowerment, right? And I'm still going, just to quickly go back to the gender aspect. We met a woman quickly who's sewing baby clothes and selling them on Facebook, and that's how she makes her money in a rural part of Sri Lanka. So if they have the tools and if they have the knowledge, it's a exceptional form of empowerment for people. So we just need to link that gap in terms of the technical knowledge versus giving them access.
Yeah, absolutely. We have 140 million small businesses on Facebook sort of using platforms like ours, and using ours for sure to sort of scale up, and we really would be grateful and I think see a big opportunity in bringing more from Sri Lanka. So that's of course place for more. Last words from both of you on how you see this going forward.
Being close to India, we are inspired by the digital boom of India, and there are so many superpowers and new technology boom around Asia. So this is Asia's age, and Sri Lanka would like to contribute its best. We have become a good outsourcing destination, software industry destination, and some of the talented professionals. So we do have challenges of keeping this talent within the country and to absorb this appropriate technology from the region. And we hope that we can have a lot of opportunities. So we have 60% of our Sri Lankan owned companies, and there are about 20% of jointly owned companies. So there are still potential for the other countries to come and invest in Sri Lanka and join hands with this industry for this growth.
I do agree there, because that's another big parallel really there with India, that we have. There's no dearth of talent. We have the human resources, we have the skill, we just need the right opportunities. I'll give you the last word, Anuradha.
Just to conclude, I mean, I think the region needs to work as a whole, whichever measures that we're working on together, to make sure we use it for the benefits that it offers, but also to work together to counter some of the negative impacts that sometimes pop up with these platforms as well. But as a region, I think we desperately need to work together.
Right, and we are sort of hearing that from leaders in this part of the world on how we can tackle it and sort of can move ahead only if we are together. But thanks so much, Anuradha and Waruna. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Natasha.
Well, that's it then from us, but there's another session coming up where we are looking at the end of cash. You don't want to miss that.